under the theme of carbon neutral strategy, I'd like to talk about ships. What kind of ships we will see down the road. I work at a shipbuilding company, and I love ships. And one anthropologist wrote a book titled Ships, and the title was so great. And this is what I saw on the first image, that he said that the age of ship is over. The ships are dead. I thought that I made a wrong decision to purchase the book, but as I read the book, I came to realize that what he said was very correct and true. He wrote the book back in 1940s, and back in the days, ship was to carry goods or passengers. It was a means of transportation. When we go to Europe or the United States, we use airplane, not vessel. So what he meant is that other than the cruise tourism, the era of ship as a carrier of goods or passengers is over. But I still work for the company, and the company is very prosperous. That it is because now ship is carrying containers, but from now on we will see a new era of ship, which as a energy carrier. But in the day of net zero, there is no way for ships to carry oils or clothes. And what are we gonna do? We talk quite extensively about carbon neutrality and hydrogen, but we have to see the two different scenarios here. The first is hydrogen as a cargo to be carried by a vessel, and another scenario is hydrogen as a fuel to run a vessel. So most of the presenters will elaborate on hydrogen as a fuel. That's a category B in this case. So the environmental regulations and the operation of a ship itself drive the growth of hydrogen as a fuel, but the energy source, the energy mix is a bigger driver for the development of hydrogen. Ships carry a large amount of cargoes, but now we are moving and transitioning into renewable energy, so that brings about a serious concern. Now, why is hydrogen important? Because new and renewable energy is not stable, so it accounts for only 30% of the energy mix. That is why the remaining 70% requires a CCS, or the energy storage, and energy efficiency is the highest with hydrogen. That is why, as we move toward net zero society and hydrogen-based economy, the role of hydrogen will grow even further. So, in this case, we will see the increase in the cargo volume. What I can see fortunate is that, well, this is the expectation and the outlook by Clarkson up to 2050. If we take a closer look at this, oil seems to be going down, but the gray section is LNG and LPG. Compared to 2020, well, its volume will grow exponentially. Even in the process of moving towards net zero, it will take such a long time for us to achieve this carbon neutrality, and the energy consumption, the absolute volume itself will grow. That is why the demand for LNG and LPG will grow even further. So we talk about hydrogen and ammonia, but that doesn't mean that the cargo volume will go down, but in the maritime industry, well, this will present a new opportunity, a new type of vessels. There are three different ways to carry hydrogen. The first is liquefied hydrogen, and the second is LHC, or liquid hydrogen energy. And third way to carry hydrogen is to create and generate hydrogen at the point of consumption, but in this case, carbon dioxide will be generated. And to achieve net zero, we should be able to tackle this issue of carbon emission. That is why we have to turn to blue hydrogen. And in this case, we also have to consider how to eliminate carbon emissions. So what are the carriers we can see and we will see for the transportation of new energy, and what my group is doing? Well, this is the area I'd like to focus on in the second part of my presentation. As for ammonia, this is technologically accessible. My company ranked first in the world in terms of LPG carrier. Unlike LNG carrier, but LNG carrier put LNG into different carriers and different tanks. But as for LPG carrier, well, it has multiple tanks, but each tank would carry a different type of gas and energy. And as for the standard cargo, ammonia is registered. So ammonia is registered as one of the standard cargoes, and we already have LPG carriers which carries ammonia, and we have three different shipbuilders which can build LPG carriers which can also carry ammonia. But so far, ammonia has been just one of the cargoes for the LPG carrier, but if we are really to achieve net zero and with the higher level of cargo volume, then we should to have an ammonia dedicated vessel. That is why my company completed the design as well as the AIP approval in principle for 91,000 cubic meter for ammonia. So once we have ammonia dedicated vessel, then we will have ammonia fueled propulsion vessel. That is why we are working on the development of such a vessel. Next one is hydrogen itself. And the left bottom, this is the image you might have seen quite frequently. This is a liquefied hydrogen test ship produced by Kawasaki. But some foreign media uses this, call this experiment ship. This is not a commercial vessel. It is very long, but the tank itself is very small, so this is not commercially viable. So this is only to see how stably you can run this liquefied hydrogen tank in the sea. And as for GEV, well, this company is specialized in CNG, and they are developing CNG type hydrogen vessel. And in the far right, you can see Hyundai LH2 or liquid hydrogen carrier. This has not been commercialized, but we are working in phases. But this is to prove the safety and stability of liquefied hydrogen. Last year, we obtained the world first approval in principle for a commercial liquefied hydrogen carrier. And earlier this year, in collaboration with the Korean Register, we have been developing the international standard for hydrogen fuel tank as well as the hydrogen handling system. So we have created the system starting from the ship, the standard, and then the system. In order to reduce the concerns in the market, we have carried out various efforts, and why we have been able to successfully soothe the concern is because we have reduced the boil-off rate. Well, liquefied hydrogen has such a high boil-off rate, so it has at least 20 to 30% of the hydrogen cargo loss during voyage. But in order to prevent this, well, the market will believe that you need a high-performing tank. I think this concern is generated from our understanding of the LNG carrier. The LNG carrier has liquefaction facility, and it also has a DF engine. But since most of the large carriers have membrane and liquefaction facilities, well, these facilities would cost you quite a lot. that is why the market believes that this is not commercially feasible. But as for CNG, well, they use high bar tank. In this case, well, there would be virtually no loss. We use a Type C pressure tank, and during the voyage, most of the BOG is kept in the tank, and as for the remaining BOG is used for the engine or fuel cell. We are developing a fuel cell in collaboration with the research center. So this is not just a concept, but this is something we have actually proved. So as for the round trip between Australia and Korea, there has been no BOG loss. So 85% of the BOG is accumulated in the tank, and we use about 15% of the BOG as a fuel. So this much we have successfully reduced the carbon emission. So this will also contribute to the low emission. Another concern in the market is that the storage, the requirement of the infrastructure on land. So extremely low temperature the tank for hydrogen might be required. Of course, but if the size of the cargo would go exponentially, then we would need such a large infrastructure. But at this time, when we are trying to launch this technology, I think, well, the hydrogen regasification system is more than enough. Well, this is the system which has been available for the LNG up to this point. As you can see in the center, GV, since they carry pressurized gas, well, they claim that they can provide this pressurized gas in multiple places. But as for our LH2 carrier, we carry them without liquid storage, but instead we have hydrogen regasification system enabling distribution to multiple destinations. So this is how the vessel would look like based on all the features I just elaborated on. This is the concept vessel, and we are now seeing this step by step. We are in discussion and conversation with overseas carriers as well. Let me turn to CO2 carrier. As I mentioned previously, CO2 is critical for achieving blue hydrogen, and as for the storage of the carbon dioxide, well, the carrier can carry carbon hydrogen to various parts of the world across the ocean. Coca-Cola and some of the large companies are already using the carbon dioxide carrier, but only for a small volume of the cargo. But going forward, we would need a larger scale CO2 carrier. That is why we obtained AIP for 20,000 cubic meter and 40,000 cubic meter. Not just the ship itself, once the CO2 carrier becomes commercialized, then we would need a carbon dioxide injection offshore platform to keep and store the carbon dioxide in the deep sea. So in line with this net zero effort, we will create and develop and create CO2 injection offshore platform. Not just that, from the point of production, most of the renewable energies are generated through in offshore facilities, but we will create an offshore wind farm. In other words, we are developing as a new product a green hydrogen production offshore platform integrated with offshore wind power. So I shared with you the new product we are formulating and developing with regard to the green ship. Although my discussion and presentation is limited to the ocean, we will cover the entire value chain because the Hyundai Group has various points in the entire supply chain by 2030. So we will continue our efforts to develop hydrogen-related solutions. Thank you.